The second kind of variable to look at as well too is which part of the world. I'm assuming we're talking about our part of the world in Africa, right? I think like one of the biggest disconnects in terms of value addition, if you look at not just, if you want to define value as basically making money, very important, businesses can thrive, especially payments industries in our part of the world. But if you're talking in my part of the fintech space, which is basically financial inclusion, it's hard because you're building something that's specifically a solution to an African problem. And the funders, historically, certainly the last few years, especially the US VCs, et cetera, are pouring money into our part of the world. But what they want is a replica of what has worked in the global north they want the Amazon of Africa. They want the Monzo of Africa. They want all that, which is fine. That's what they understand and know. They don't understand our part of the world. The money comes from there as well too. But the difficulty there is that if you're saying that you're doing financial inclusion and building that, a lot of those kind of platforms might be financially successful, but they may not add value in terms of what they actually were set out to do. And I think in our part of the world, there's a big disconnect there, and it has to do where the power comes from. If we were in charge of our own money, if we were the LPs and the funds here as well to ourselves, we would go into meetings with very informed discussions. I mean, we've raised money from VCs, but the ones now in this difficult environment that are investing in us are those that understand the problem, have experience in Africa, and certainly who have like an impact lens as well too that they look at.
I love to hear that because I think more of those are needed.
Look, it existed before the fintech boom. I started this journey a while ago, and those were my connections. So it was tough. Those investors are risk averse, so they don't take startup risk. So VCs have a very important role to play there as well too. But what's very important is that I can lean back on those contacts that I had, and we close our round now because those are the investors that invested in us. And those are people who've had experience on our part of the world for 20 plus years and have seen it before. Have seen what has worked, what hasn't worked, and they also know what the problems are and how you solve for them. They're not worried about the fact that we have physical touch points as a digital company. We're not app-based only, because if you do something like that, you're killing off like 85% of the market, right?
That's so interesting.
It's complicated.
It is complicated, and it's also like, it makes me think, okay, but how do we educate other funders around this? Because there's so many established fintechs across this region that have really solid products, solid go-to-markets, solid customer acquisition, great business plans. They got the P&L intact, and they either just can't access the right types of investment. In some cases, those are language barriers, like I talk about Francophone. We often find feedback coming in that says, well, the investors just steer clear because they can't speak French. They don't understand this market, and it's so diverse from Anglophone-speaking West Africa, But and I said it earlier on, when I was talking about finding gaps in the creator space. It's like, how do you educate and bring awareness to those that exist in a market? Do you go out there, big bang, make a lot of noise and hope that you attract them? Or do you low-key, put your head down, build your business, try and bootstrap wherever you can, solve for funding requirements through strategic partnerships as opposed to raising VC money? Because there's a whole, other lens that a lot of these fintechs look at that through. Like, how do you educate?
Gosh, is it our job to educate?
It should be.
Really?
Part of it.
Okay.
I feel so.
Interesting. So, I guess it's a number of things, and all options need to be explored. And the real answer is actually time. It takes time for this to happen, and it takes fingers being burnt for it to happen as well too. Because as an investor coming into our part of the world and thinking, we're going to take all this risk, this company is going to knock it out of the park, and they're going to replicate what we've seen in the US quite quickly in Ghana, they will burn. And what they'll understand is, hey, if we want to invest in this market, we have to think through a different strategy and make an effort to understand. So I think there's definitely an element of that, and we're beginning to see some of that right now, as you know, in our part of the world. So I think there's definitely an element of that. The second, actually, in terms of de-risking, and I'm putting my investor hat on now, it probably makes sense for investors outside of our sphere to invest via investors within our sphere. So instead of basically investing directly into the business, let them be a fund of funds into local VCs, 100%. Where you have someone that understands the market, whatever it is, and that will be able to kind of take you through that journey. That will happen over time. And then the third, which is sort of the utopia, is we don't need to depend. The capital flows come from within ourselves, right?
Yeah.
That's the ideal scenario. Unfortunately, even Europe depends on the US, right?
Yeah,
It's the biggest kind of place where VC money comes from. So I think it's a balance of all three of them, and it takes time for that to happen.
Yeah.
But in terms of founders going out there and being the ones who are responsible, it's hard. And, half the time now, I do due diligence before someone offers a call. I see what's in their portfolio, and I know right away that it's going to be a waste of my time to have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
And when you get on a call, I become so kind of used to it. Within seconds whether or not somebody's actually going to invest and what they're telling you and all that. It kind of you kind of build resilience that way, and you can become a bit hardened in a good way. Not disillusioned, but hardened in a good way. And it takes time, but it happens.
If you enjoyed this discussion, feel free to like our video and subscribe to our channel for more insightful conversations with founders and fintech pioneers. I also really like hearing from you guys, so if you have any questions, comments, or experiences, drop them in the comments below. Click here to watch the full episode, or click here to watch another.